Listen to the complete season ad-free by subscribing to Curious Cast Discovery exclusively on Apple Podcasts.
It's 1994, and we're in Orem, Utah. As Taj Roland drives his girlfriend Priya home, there's not much chit-chat in the car.
There was a lot of silence in between us. It was quite a bit for me to take in.
18-year-old Priya thought she was going to spend a fun evening getting to know Taj's parents. Instead, she's reeling. Taj's mum played her a tape Taj made when he first arrived in Utah, a tape nobody's ever understood because it's in Tamil, a language Taj has forgotten. But Priya speaks it fluently. That's when she discovered her boyfriend is really called Chellamuthu, and that he was kidnapped as a child. And she just can't tune out his little voice pleading to go home.
It's quite shocking, really.
And then there's the letter with the familiar handwriting she saw in Taj's scrapbook.
Oh my gosh, this is my dad.
It's strange enough that her father is somehow connected to her new boyfriend, but there's something that's really unsettling Priya. It's a photograph she saw in the scrapbook. In fact, it's the very first photograph of Taj arriving at Salt Lake City Airport, screaming in terror.
Taj with his flip-flops, and his eyes were all kind of teary-eyed, and he looked very sad.
But it's not Taj who caught Priya's attention. It's someone else in the photo.
Oh my gosh, I know him. He used to come see us. He used to come visit us. Wow.
It's that man Taj was clinging to. A short man who wears big black-rimmed glasses. It's Paul Thurvados,
Taj's orphanage owner.
What's your name?
From Curious Cast and Blanchard House, this is Stop Rewind, The Lost Boy. I'm Emma Jane Kirby. Episode 6. All the Forces of Darkness. If you're going to drop a bombshell on someone, it's always best if they're not behind the wheel of a car when you do it. So, to be on the safe side, Priya asks Taj to pull over into a drive-through, because her connection to Paul Thurvados, that's going to take some explaining.
In fact, Paul used to come to the bank that my dad was working at in Coimbatore. He was just a customer that came in.
Priya tells Taj that Paul was a regular customer at the bank. So one day, Priya's dad and Paul got chatting, and that chat completely changed the course of their lives.
He introduced this new church he had heard about to my dad. And we got a copy of the Book of Mormon, the scriptures, and my dad was introduced to the church, and our entire family converted.
So Priya's father and his entire family joined the LDS church because of Paul Thurvados. Paul then became a regular visitor at the family house, often with his wife and daughter.
He was a good family friend of ours. He'd just come visit and see how we're doing. It was just a casual chit-chat.
But not everyone in Priya's family was a fan.
I don't think my mom really liked him that much. I don't think she actually said that. I could sense that she didn't like him. Never told me why. But women have intuitions, right?
You see, Priya's family knew all about Paul's orphanage. In fact, when Priya was still in elementary school, the family moved to Utah for a couple of years when Priya's dad got a job teaching at Brigham Young University. And there in Utah, Priya's family would sometimes meet up with the families who'd adopted children from Tamil Nadu.
We knew all the families. We had maybe 2 or 3 families here in Utah. And they got in touch with my dad where he could speak to them in Tamil and translate. He knew a lot of the adopted kids and their families, but the Rolands, he never knew them.
At least he never met them in person. But Taj's adoptive parents had written to Priya's dad asking for help to trace Taj's family. And Priya's dad wrote in his reply that he wasn't optimistic about being able to help, but he was going to see Paul and would mention their concerns. So did he see Paul? And if he did, what exactly did Paul tell him?
I became more, I wouldn't say suspicious, maybe I would say suspicious.
Taj is all ready to drive round to Priya's dad's house and have it out with him. But Priya has to warn Taj that his bull-in-a-china-shop approach just won't work with her dad.
You know, my family, it's interesting. Confrontation is not a very good thing in my family. If you confront anything, you'll feel the elephant in the room. It gets quite uncomfortable.
There's also the problem that Priya's dad doesn't even know she's dating Taj. So Priya persuades Taj to let her do the talking. She will bring up the subject of the letter and Paul Thurvados with her father when the right moment comes up. And a while later, she finds that moment.
I've mentioned it to him that he wrote the letter, but I've asked him if he remembers writing that letter, and he does.
And that's where the conversation ends and never starts again. It's made clear to Priya that the subject is now closed.
So I've never really confronted him and asked him directly about Paul or what happened during that time in the orphanage. Maybe someday I'd have the courage to bring it up and ask him.
So, for the sake of their own relationship, Taj and Priya agree to sweep it under the carpet, to try to move on. And that's a tough ask for Taj.
I was frustrated that I felt that I was not getting the full truth for my questions. It felt like somebody's hiding something.
But as Priya knows well, heart-to-hearts are just not her family's style.
Yeah, we struggle with that communication.
Taj accepts they have to leave it be, but it doesn't mean he's happy about it. He's a hot-headed young man who wants answers.
There was no willingness to have a conversation around my history. It felt like somebody's hiding something.
Priya can't force her dad to talk, but she can give a voice to Chellamuthu. She gives Taj the few notes she scribbled down when she'd listened to the tape, like Taj's mother's name, Arai, which Taj had forgotten. Likewise, his big brother's name, Silveredge. So Taj adds the names of his mother and brother to his rough map, the map he drew of the town in India where he grew up, sketched from the hazy memories of his childhood. And he feels like something fundamental in him is starting to shift.
When I was listening to that cassette tape, and when Priya was to translate it, it was almost like I was back as Chellamuthu.
And hearing Chellamuthu's pleading voice makes Taj feel responsible.
The boy was trying to spill his guts out, having somebody try to listen to me, answer me, help me. And I suddenly saw a glimmer of hope to help Chellamuthu, to help this boy out.
Because he's finally found the right person to help him.
Deep inside, I knew that I was meant to help him out, to find his roots.
They marry, of course, Taj and Priya. It was kind of written in the stars.
There's this connection between me and Taj. For some reason, we were meant to meet. I knew that I was going to marry this kid.
Although convincing Priya's father that Taj and Priya were meant to be took a little more time.
No, heavens no. He wasn't happy because he didn't know anything about me. And we weren't friends. I was a pure 100% American in thought and everything.
Whereas Priya's father still feels Indian and much more traditional. In fact, none of Priya's relatives were exactly ecstatic.
I was the youngest in the family, and so my brothers were quite protective of me. So were my parents.
She was only 18 after all. Her father asked them to wait 2 years, and then he gave them his blessing. Anyway, here they are, newlyweds. 20-year-old Priya finishing up her studies, and 24-year-old Taj applying all over for jobs, while at the same time setting up his own little business with a partner in India. Money's a bit tight, but they're happy together. And he and Priya make a promise to each other that one day, long into the future, when they're rich, they'll go to southern India so they can hunt for clues about Taj's family for themselves. Fat chance on their current income. They know it's just a pipe dream.
I had no hopes of really going to India. We were college kids. I didn't have the money for airfare and all that.
So they get on with their lives. And then a year or so later, Priya's older brother calls them up to tell them he's getting married and that he hopes they'll come to his wedding reception. It's in Tamil Nadu, southern India.
My past and my future are starting to come together.
Priya's suitcase is close to bursting because southern Indian weddings are a big deal and close families expected to arrive weeks before the event to help with all the preparations. Meanwhile, Taj just got a new job, which is why he's not going with Priya, or at least not quite yet. Priya's going ahead with her parents and Taj will arrive later. He's only managed to get a few days off. Not much for an international trip, but it's better than nothing. Now, Taj still has his little clothing company on the side. His business partner's name is Christopher Raj. They've worked together for a couple of years at this point, although they've never actually met in person. But Chris has promised to pick up Taj when he lands in Tamil Nadu at the airport, in the hope that they can hold a few meetings with manufacturers nearby. Taj's entrepreneurial spirit's all fired up, even if he knows he's pushing it with Priya, shoehorning work into a wedding trip. But he wants to make the most out of this visit, short though it is. It's just that, as he's zipping up his case, a thought floats into his head.
The idea suddenly came to me that, I'm going to go back to India, and I kind of dug around for that map.
Along with his hand-drawn map, he takes another piece of paper from the drawer. It's a copy of a letter from Paul Thurvados to Fred and Linda Rowland. And printed on the letterhead at the top is the orphanage address, Madukarai, in the state of Tamil Nadu. Could that be near the wedding venue? Or maybe it's close to the airport.
So there wasn't really a plan. It was more of this is kind of interesting.
In the cab on the way to Salt Lake City Airport, Taj tucks his 2 documents into his passport holder and tries to calm his racing thoughts.
It was a tingling in the brain. I still remember when I landed and I came out, the gust of hot air and the smell and the people and all the Indians. I just was overwhelmed with this emotion. It was almost a fear.
Taj has just arrived at Chennai Airport, and no wonder he's scared. Because he's been here before, nearly 20 years before, in 1979, when Chennai was called Madras, and when he was called Chellamuthu.
It was a little bit shocking. It was jolting because the Chellamuthu's fantasies about coming home, suddenly it was a little bit crushing and overwhelming because that's not what I landed into.
Nothing is familiar.
And the biggest thing is I didn't understand the language.
Somehow, through the swarms of shoving people, Taj's business partner, Christopher Raj, spots him.
So excited because I'm meeting a big business person.
And bowing, Chris places 2 sandalwood garlands around Taj's neck.
I went along with a couple of garland. That's a sandalwood garland.
It's a Tamil tradition to welcome home a traveller who's been away a long time.
Okay, there's somebody here that I can count on.
Chris is keen to impress his US business partner, so he wastes no time in telling Taj about all the meetings he's set up with potential suppliers.
So I booked a small hotel and I advertised on the paper about a US businessman coming. So there were a lot of people who came, they wanted appointment, I had fixed appointment in that hotel.
Taj does those interviews, but he's pretty vacant. His mind's elsewhere, and it's got nothing to do with jet lag. Between meetings, he doesn't talk business.
I would stand outside on the balcony and just looking down on the streets, because in my mind, any one of these people could be my relative or some relation to me.
And the second the last client leaves, Taj turns to Chris and starts to talk, openly, in a way that he's never been able to talk with his friends back in Utah, in a way that until now, he's only ever really talked to Priya. But his story just spills out of him.
I'm like pouring out my soul to Christopher Raj.
They miss dinner because Taj can't stop talking. About his childhood in India, about his mother, Arayi, his drunken father, his brothers, his little sister, and about being kidnapped from the bus stand and then sold to the orphanage. And then, quite suddenly, the truth dawns on Taj. The truth about why he's really here.
And that's when I kind of came clean with Chris. And I said, Chris, my in-laws think that I'm coming for a wedding, but my goal is to find my family.
Now, Chris has a young family to support, and he's been counting on this business deal with Taj to bring him some much-needed extra cash. But he's also a dad and a Sunday school teacher who adores children. So when he looks at Taj talking so frankly, he doesn't see a brash American businessman. He sees a hurting, lost child. He sees Chellamuthu, which is why he cancels all their other business meetings and sets a new agenda.
I can help you. If the Lord wills, it'll happen. We can try to find your parents.
So together, they board a train to Coimbatore, where Priya and her family are waiting for Taj to join the wedding festivities, unaware that parties are the last thing on his mind.
It was a night train, and I couldn't sit still.
All night, right through into dawn, Taj stands on the gangway between carriages, breathing in the hot, spicy air of India, eyes peeled.
Because in my mind, I thought, hey, maybe we might drive past my house or this village. So let me just stand outside between the two galleys and just watch. And maybe something will trigger me to bring a memory back.
Taj has no idea that the state of Tamil Nadu is almost as big as Utah, nor does he know that about 55 million people live here. So for 9 hours, Taj drinks in his homeland, checking each settlement they pass against the town he sketched on his map.
I remember very vividly all the small villages that I drove past and the small rivers, the green pastures, the green rice paddies. It was a magical moment.
But the spell is soon broken. When they arrive at Coimbatore station, Chris drops Taj at the wedding venue where festivities are already beginning. He promises to come back the next day to start the search for Taj's family. And once he's gone, Taj pulls Priya and her parents aside and makes his big announcement. Although he'll be around for the wedding day itself, he'll be spending most of his short vacation hunting down his roots.
There was a lot of shouting and quite a bit of an argument.
His speech is not well received.
Because I was there to attend the wedding, meet my family, extended families, but it was kind of all thrown at me at the last minute during the festivities of the wedding.
Taj and Priya have their first big fight. Not only is Taj's decision to skip the festivities socially embarrassing for Priya, she's also worried about his safety.
She didn't want me to rock the boat at the wedding, and How are you going to do it? You don't speak the language. How are you going to get from A to B? What are you going to do?
But Taj knows exactly what he's going to do. First of all, he has Chris. And secondly, he's finally going to square up to Priya's father and confront him. After all, he knew Paul Thurvados, so he must be able to tell him something that could help him in his search. Priya warns Taj it's the wrong approach.
I wasn't really prepared. I was kind of scared.
And the tension's building because Taj has also found out something about Priya's uncle. He's pretty much always lived in Coimbatore in Tamil Nadu. That's where he works. In fact, he used to work in a very particular kind of business.
Priya's uncle had an orphanage.
An orphanage, only about 10 miles away from Lincoln Home for Homeless Children. And some of the children from Priya's uncle's orphanage were also adopted overseas.
And some of those children went to Utah.
Now, just by chance, one of those children from Priya's uncle's orphanage is also at the wedding, because she's a friend of the family. And this girl was abandoned at the orphanage as a newborn, because her mother was unmarried and unable to care for her. And in her, Taj sees a kindred spirit.
And she was craving to also find her family. And Priya's father knew the mother. The mother was a maid.
Taj just can't understand why Priya's father and her uncle aren't now doing everything in their power to reunite mother and daughter.
Priya's father wouldn't introduce this girl and the maid, even though they knew who the maid was. And at that time, I didn't understand why.
Of course, this is rural India, nearly 30 years ago. And if that maid's family found out she'd had a baby out of wedlock, she'd probably have been cast out onto the street. So the case needed sensitive handling. But Taj, he just sees more cover-ups.
Again, I didn't understand the culture. All I could see was, why the hell wouldn't you help this girl? You know who it is. Go do it, right?
So Taj lets rip. He shakes his map at Priya's father and uncle and the letter from Lincoln Home for the Homeless, demanding to be told what they might know about their friend Paul Thurvados and his orphanage.
I was upset. I was frustrated. I was suspicious of everybody.
And stuck in the middle is Priya.
I was definitely stuck in between two kinds of love. Do I be loyal to mom and dad, or should I stick with Taj? He's wanted this all his life.
Priya's father is incensed that Taj has chosen a family wedding as the venue to air his fury. And he reminds Taj this is meant to be Priya's brother's big day, not his. He refuses to listen to any more about Taj's search for his birth family. This is absolutely not the moment.
They didn't want to be any part of it, really. They didn't want to help him out or anything like that. Maybe another time.
But Taj needs answers now. All he wants is help to get to Madurai and details about the orphanage there.
I said something I shouldn't have, and I probably put Priya's uncle in a bad light. And out of his frustration, and he called me a derogatory term.
It's left to Priya to translate.
In Tamil, they use the word ternai. Nai is something they use in my family quite a bit.
It's a stray dog. It's a very derogatory term to call someone.
A stray dog. And Taj feels the sting acutely.
It hurt because, again, I felt alone and all by myself, a stray with no home.
But the insult also makes him more determined. Determined to prove to everyone that somewhere out there in this huge, sprawling country, he has a family of his own. Somewhere he belongs. So tomorrow, he'll go to Madurai, to the orphanage, where he'll track down Paul Thurvados and grill him for every bit of information he can muster. Because he's confident Paul will remember something about his family and where they lived.
I felt like he was the key to unlock where they were.
And Taj is also sure that when Paul sees little Chellamuthu again, he'll want to help him. He'll be delighted that Chellamuthu's come back, married and all grown up.
He was my caretaker, right? I want him to be proud of me.
Which is when someone at the wedding steps forward and says, Paul Thurvados is dead.
You think it's this way or that way? I suddenly have a...
It's after the church, no?
Yeah, that's what I thought.
It's always hard to recall with any accuracy the real details of childhood, particularly if, like Taj Khyber Roland, you've spent a lifetime trying to shut them out.
I normally have a pretty, when it comes to addresses after you drive me there, go there one time and if I'm driving, I remember pretty well, but somehow this orphanage is always eludes me. Who knows, maybe I don't really want to remember this place.
Taj Roland and his friend Christopher Raj have visited the orphanage in Madurai many times over the past 25 years. But even today, it takes Taj a while to get his bearings.
Not much is, still not much has changed, huh? All right, let's see if we can hold on. Right, yep, this is the road.
This is the road he was driven down as a kidnapped child. The first time Taj drives this road as an adult, it's 1997. He's just walked out of Priya's brother's wedding, and he's in a high state of emotion. He's had a blowout row with his in-laws about searching for his birth family. And he's just learned that Paul Thurvados died the previous year. He'd been counting on the orphanage owner for providing some answers.
I really wanted to meet him. I was kind of split between anger and appreciation. So it was more kind of reunite. I thought he'd be happy to see me. You know, it was sad news for me to hear that he'd passed away, and I didn't get a chance to kind of close a chapter of my life. But that's how it goes.
He and Chris search for anything that could tell them they're on the right track. And then he sees the old cement factory. The factory where Paul used to work. Bullseye.
Yeah, that's
better. Welcome to Madurai.
They knock on a few doors and locals confirm it. Yes, there's an orphanage here. But it's been empty for years.
It was a haunted place. And just the memory of that alone, my emotions just took over, and I just cried like a baby. I was inconsolable. My chest was heaving, and just tears were just rolling down. I think I suddenly was there as a child, as a young Chellamuthu, and the sheer hopelessness of Chellamuthu was that he had no place to go, and he didn't know where to go. That's the western wall of the orphanage. It's interesting, as a memory of a child, it looked huge, gargantuous. But now you look at it and you go, wow, that's a very, very small space. And, you know, I couldn't escape those walls. They're 5-foot walls, but when you're, 3 foot something, it looks pretty high.
As Taj is wandering the complex, he notices he's being watched by a young man, just a little older than himself. Stared at, in fact. And he asked Chris to go to talk to him to find out what the man wants.
He said, I've seen this kid before. I know him. And I just started laughing because I said to him, I don't know this guy from Adam, right?
But the man's insistent that he recognizes Taj. His father had run the school next to the orphanage, he explains, and sometimes he'd let him go there and play with the orphans.
He goes in the back, and a few minutes later, he's got the shoebox, a bunch of photos. And one of the photos he picks out is of me and him inside the orphanage.
Taj remembers being filled with hope, and with Chris translating for him, he fires question after question at the man, desperate for clues that could lead him to his family. But the man was only a child himself at the time and can give no information.
So, another dead end.
But Taj and Chris are also intercepted by a local woman called Maria, who wants to chat. She wants to share something with them, some gossip. It's about Paul Thurvados. She's matter of fact. She says that there were kidnapped children here. She says they got sent abroad. She shrugs her shoulders and then adds that Paul Thurvados was a sweet and religious man. But she thinks he was the mastermind behind it. She sighs and lifts up her hands and reveals that, in the end, the police came and arrested him. Taj feels like he's been punched. Maria claims it's not just him who'd been snatched from his family. Other children had been taken too, which means, allegedly, Paul was complicit in kidnapping, and the law had eventually caught up with him. Even today, it's still not a narrative Taj likes to believe.
There's other neighbors that talked ill of Paul, and some of the stories that I heard that he was taking advantage and making a lot of money, I don't know, and I don't want to tarnish a man that I don't know about. I don't want to have anything that's accusatory to him.
But Maria tells Taj and Chris that the orphanage was raided by police when a child from a rich family disappeared. That's when police realised Paul had no paperwork to account for some of his so-called orphans.
So he got into trouble. And then they were shut down.
Again, that was hearsay. We don't have anything. It's what the people said.
But in the moment, it's not really Paul's reputation that's weighing on Taj's mind. It's that lack of documentation.
He thought he can find his parents very easily because his aim was, okay, I found this place, so I know I can get some records out of here. That will take me to my parents. 100% he was sure. But that is what we couldn't find.
And no paperwork means Taj is back to square one.
But in my mind, I just had to keep trying. And so that's when the map came out.
So Chris and Taj begin to drive around Madukkarai's potholed roads in circles, each time taking a wider circumference to see if anything might trigger Taj's memory.
We thought, we'll just be magically, we'll drive around and we'll find a park and we'll find the bus stand and we'll find the river and bam, it's going to take us to the pathway back to my family.
They circle wider and wider until they're back on the outskirts of Coimbatore. But nothing seems familiar.
We did that all day long, and I think I passed out from all the heat and the sweat and all that.
They only call it a day when the light fades. Plus, of course, Taj needs at least to put in an appearance at the wedding party. But Chris can't bear to see his friend so disappointed, and all that night he prays for him.
I said, Lord, if it is your will, help him to find his parents. This was my only one single line prayer.
Back with Priya's family, Taj is too dejected to join in the wedding celebrations. Why didn't he scour his mother's adoption files or her journals before coming here? Why didn't he think of getting Priya to listen again to that audio cassette he'd made as a child? If she'd transcribed it, maybe he could see if Chellamuthu had recorded a clue. As it is, where does he go from here? Taj knows he's burnt his bridges with Priya's father and uncle. He can't ask them for any help. But he's vaguely aware that Priya's brother served as a missionary in this area, in fact, across Tamil Nadu. Frankly, what's he got left to lose?
And I had to pull him aside because I didn't want my father-in-law or my uncles to be involved. I pulled him aside and I said, is there any way you can help me out here?
So Taj unfolds the map he made in London. And as he spreads it out for Priya's brother, he realises how hopeless it all is. The map's so embarrassingly naive. It's just a 7-year-old's impression of a town. A park, a bus stand, some mud huts and a river. Who could recognize a place from that?
And he said, this looks a lot like a place called E Road.
E Road, or Eroda. The inflections of the name echo inside Taj's head. The melody of the sounds vaguely familiar.
Eroda. Eroda. Eroda.
So finally, Taj knows exactly where to start looking. You've been listening to Stop Rewind, The Lost Boy, a Blanchard House production for Curious Cast. It's hosted, written and produced by me, Emma Jane Kirby, with additional production by Himat Shalagram. Stop Rewind, The Lost Boy is inspired by the book The Orphan Keeper by Cameron Wright. We'd like to make it clear that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has never promoted or facilitated the adoption of children from Paul Thurvedos's orphanage, Lincoln Home for Homeless Children. On the Ground interpreting by Smita TK. Additional research by Catherine Gillon. Original music by Toby Matamon, Louis Nankmanel and Daniel Lloyd Evans. Sound design and mix engineering by Volkan Kiziltuk, Daniel Lloyd Evans, Toby Matamon and Louis Nankmanel. Post-production supervised by Daniel Lloyd Evans. The creative director of Blanchard House is Rosie Pye. The head of content at Blanchard House is Lawrence Grizel. For Blanchard House, the executive producers are Amika Shortino-Nolan and Lawrence Grizel. For Curious Cast, the executive producers are Dida Velasquez and Chris Duncombe.